So we're learning the Maimer, Ivdus Hashem B'Simcha. Since Velvel wasn't here yesterday and Avi wasn't here, I'd like to repeat just the Nakuda. And it's a very important Nakuda because, point.
What page are you on?
We're on page 125, but we're going to get to the text, please God, later. First, I want to share just a general idea. The Maimer here has been about Simcha and Tainug, attaining joy, happiness, and attaining pleasure for HaKadosh Baruch Hu in many different ways. That was the discussion at length. Towards the end of the last chapter, the Rebbe said something new. He introduced the concept of anava. Anava meaning humility, an onav. And the Rebbe said that the vessel, the keli, for having simcha is anava. So this is now the question. What is the role of anava? What is the role of humility in simcha? And to this he quotes a pasuk in Yeshaya, V'yasufu anovim b'Hashem simcha. And the modest ones increase their connection with God through simcha. And at the beginning of this chapter, on 124, the first chapter, the first part of the chapter, on 124, he asked the question, wait a second. When you're in a mode of anava, when you're in a mode of humility and modesty, you're to yourself, you're insular, you're inside. And when you are in a mode of simcha, you're outward, you're expanding, right? So how did the two go together? How can you be in a mode of expansion and simultaneously be in a mode of, in Yiddish we say Verquetschtkeit. You won't find such a word in English. Never ever. I'm probably in Russian either not. Verquetschtkeit. We say, is a verquetschter Mensch, Avram. He is, what does verquetscht mean? He is a person that's, Yaini, how would you say verquetscht in English?
So I guess someone that's uptight.
Uptight, like he's in himself. In Hebrew, the word is kibbutz. What does kibbutz mean, Avi? Shriveled up, shriveled. Contracted, yeah, but verquetscht, I don't like that as a translation of verquetscht. But
that's like complaining.
A kvetch. But no, but yeah, but that's not a literal meaning of the word. Kvetch means to squeeze. Kvetch, kvetch means he's squeezed up. He's like into himself, So when you're in that mode, how could and another, a modest person is like verquetscht. He's quiet, he's humble, and at the very same time, Vayasufu Hashem ba'anovim, Vayasufu anovim ba'Hashem b'simcha. Simcha. The verse in Yeshaya puts together simcha and anava, and seemingly it's two separate expressions of soul, psychologically and otherwise. And the Rebbe started explaining to us so far that that's true if your version and understanding of anava is self-deprecation, pchisut, in Hebrew, pchisut atzmai, lessening of self, shiflus atzmai, lowering of self. In English we call that self-deprecation, putting yourself down. So then the Rebbe says, if that's your understanding of anava, you're 100% right. You cannot be in that mode and be b'simcha. They don't go together. But Since that's not the real meaning of anova, but rather, what is the real meaning of anova? It is heder, hergish, atzmai. Awareness of self is removed, is not there. Hergish atzmai, awareness of self. Awareness of self, not in the sense of not having a healthy self-esteem. Who am I that I should feel special because I was blessed with a talent, a gift of mind, a heart, hands or feet? And the Rebbe gave the example, going on to page 125, of someone a Jew will not brag and say, you know why I'm special? Because I believe in God. You know why I'm special? Because I have Mesiras Nefesh for Torah and mitzvahs. What? That's a given. Otherwise, in a way, you're not a Jew. You wouldn't be created as a Jew. And I share with you a personal story from the Alter Rebbe. The Rebbe repeated the following story in 1983, Purim during the Farbrengen, and you can see it online. You can actually see it and hear the Farbrengen. Purim 1983. I think it's called "Listen to Me" is the caption of that selection on Gem. The Rebbe said, once the Alter Rebbe looked out his window and he saw Hasidim, throngs of Hasidim were coming to the Alter Rebbe's house because they wanted to hear Torah from him. And he turned to his Rebbetzin Sterne and he said, what do they want from me? In other words, who am I that they want to hear Torah from? So she saw that she has to save the day here. So she turned to the Alter Rebbe. She said, they're not coming to you. They're coming to hear what you know and heard from your teachers. And after the Alter Rebbe said this, after she said this to the Alter Rebbe, he then said to her, if that's the case, why they're coming, I will say and say and say. That's the end of the story. Then the Rebbe brought her back home to explain the idea and intimated that he's speaking about himself. Who am I to sit Purim at a Farbrengen holding up people for hours, including giving them admonishment? He said that. And the answer, and what's the answer? I'm sharing with you what I heard from my teachers and my father-in-law, etc. And if that's the case, it's not about me. And the same is true for everything, right? The Torah says, since Velvel's a doctor, we'll use that as an example. Rape yerape. Mikan nitn reshus l'roife lirpois. From here we know that Hashem has given permission and ability for a doctor to heal. That is the classification of a doctor according to Torah. Nothing more and nothing less. Of course, the smile helps. And knowing what you're doing helps. Right? And the Rebbe always said, when it comes to a medical issue, go to a doctor who's an expert in that field and a friend. Right? If you have a heart issue, you don't go to an eye doctor. You go to a heart doctor. But what is the fundamental issue of any and all doctors? Hold on. Why don't I see it? Oh my gosh, do I have issues? Hold on. Hello. Okay. What's the fundamental issue of any and all doctors? It is the power of healing who gave you the power. Rape Yerape, the Eibishter gave the power. So the Rebbe is saying like this in this mimer: for a doctor to think that he is the healer, that he did something special by healing, is ridiculous. God gifted you with this ability, and you chose to use it in the right way through your free will. Therefore, it flows through you. You're a funnel. And the Rebbe gave the examples of faith in God. Faith in God, you're bragging with your faith, or more so with your Mesiras Nefesh. And I started to talk about this in the last year, yesterday. I just want to add a little bit to it. Because I saw this by my own father-in-law who came from Kharkov, Ukraine. He was a Russian chassid, a Lubavitcher chassid. And I saw it by his uncle, my great uncle, Reb Mendel Futterfass. And I saw these Yidden who, every one of these Jews gave their life and were ready to die for Yiddishkeit. And guess what? They didn't think they were doing anything special. They didn't know anything else, meaning to say, this was being a Yid. You know, I don't know about you guys, but for me, it's very foreign. Because we weren't raised this way. That's why, you know, the American Hasidim, in the eyes of the old Russian Hasidim, which mostly already all gone, although we have Velvel and many very wonderful Hasidim, Russian Hasidim, but, you know, they were called chocolatkiness. You know what chocolatkiness means? Chocolate nights. They know how to eat a good piece of chocolate, and they think they're big Hasidim. My wife, who grew up in Melbourne and with a father like that and other Hasidim, she would tell me that they would, you know what I'm saying, that they would laugh. Not laugh, like come on. You're a little hot? You're a little cold? You're like, what? This. Another story. There was a chassid named Reb Yehoshua Dubravsky. He lived in Crown Heights. He was a Russian chassid, a contemporary of my father-in-law's. And he came from Hasidic stock, from a Lubavitcher Chassidim. And he was very talented. He was a gifted writer in Yiddish. He was like maybe the best Yiddish writer, one of the best, you know, on the highest level. And he was a chassid, a true chassid. So I know I have someone here in Borough Park who's very bright. He was raised in Yerushalayim. He was in the Torah Karta, Chabad, the Torah Karta, a whole story. But the bottom line is, he's very bright. So he got a hold, and he loves history, and he loves knowing about Hasidim, about Rabbonim, and you know, about people who we look up to. So he went to Rabbi Dubravsky, and he said, could you tell me about this chassid and that chassid and this chassid who you met in Russia, you know, in Samarkand and Tashkent and then before, you know, you saw. So after a while, Dubravsky turns to him, he says, listen, my friend, if you want to see the real Hasidim, you need to go to the cemetery in Samarkand. That's where you will see the real Hasidim. And he's talking about himself and his generation compared to his parents' generation, which didn't make it out of Russia, and they passed away and they're buried in Samarkand. He says, over there, you'll see some real Hasidim. Us that are alive, we're not the real McCoy. They're the real McCoy. It was such a, whamsy of an answer, right into bullseye, right into the Eugen. Like, you know, you think I'm a chassid? You think I'm a special Yid? I'm a nothing compared to these Yidden. Now, on one hand, if you walk around with this thinking, you can get very depressed and you won't be able to do what you need to do. At the same time, to walk around with the feeling I'm doing something special, it's foolish. You're not doing anyone a favor. On the contrary, if you don't use your talents that Hashem gave you, You're a Meirid B'Malchus. You're rebelling against the king. This, Avram, is the sense of Bitul Atzmi, the obliteration of self-awareness. That's what we mean. So therefore, for these people, and the Rebbe says here, Yerusha Hime Avoseinu, it's an inheritance from our ancestors. What does that mean? So I told you yesterday, when you inherit, whether it be funds or something else, do you go around saying, hey, I'm a great guy, I got an inheritance? And we all know that sometimes family members get an inheritance and you look at them and they say, oh my gosh, they're such decrepit people and they got the inheritance? Like, why didn't I get it? And what's the answer, Yoini? What's the answer? Ask God. Ask your parent. Why they decide to leave the money over to this and this son or daughter or But the fact is that the misgeret, the whole environment of inheritance has nothing to do with you, with us. So the Rebbe says here that just as faith in God and having self-sacrifice for God, for a Jew, is an inherited quality from Avraham Avinu, so too, anova, humility. Although we refine ourselves to work and having humility, guess what? The point is that when we have the humility, true humility is feeling as though you got an inheritance. So what are you bragging about? Now let's look at this inside, page 125. I want to go back and repeat because they weren't here, right? Let's go back to 124 actually. The paragraph that begins with Amnon on 124, the third line, the second word, I'll just read it a little quickly. The idea is that Anova is not deprecation of the soul, feeling low, because one doesn't find good within himself. Or if he really is in a good place. And that's why he feels low and humble, says the Rebbe, that's not Anova. That's not what we're talking about. Kiyim, rather, what is Anova? Hashiflus da Anova hu mitzat heder hergesh atzmai. The shiflus, the modesty of the Anova that we're talking about is the removal of self-awareness. The fact that a person doesn't look at himself as doing something special, and everything that he does that's even good. Even though he's doing good and learning of Torah, doing mitzvahs and having self-sacrifice, he doesn't walk away saying, hey, I'm a great guy. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't know that what he's doing is special. He definitely knows that what he's doing is good and proper. Nevertheless,